I miss my cat. My cat's still in Canada.
That's tough. So wait, I know you moved, but I don't. When did you move?
I moved like a year and a half ago. So kind of the summer when COVID was ending and festivals were coming back. I got my visa and I was like, let's go.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah. But man, the cat's still there. That's tough.
The cat is still there. I still visit like every few months when I have like a show in Vancouver.
Right.
But then I'll go back and be like, wow, I can't. It just reminds you of your old life almost.
It can be hard to go back. Like, yeah, sometimes I'll visit home and yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, I love seeing family and I love seeing all the places I remember. But then, yeah, there is kind of a weird like wistfulness to it in a way.
Yeah, because it's like all your past memories almost. And everything's still the same, which is interesting. Because like I feel like when you're touring and on the road a lot, I'm getting into it already.
Yeah, we could just jump into it. Why not? Yeah.
Hi.
Hello, it's nice to see you. Thanks for doing this again.
Thank you for having me back. I think it's so cool that we're back. Like, is it 2 years later?
It's something like that. It's maybe like a year and a half, something. I feel like it's just under 2 years.
That's pretty crazy because I feel like when I first was on this podcast, I was a different person.
Well, I mean, let's talk about it. Yeah, because certainly a lot has happened. I mean, you moved to LA from Vancouver, which is a big deal. And like getting the visa, I'm sure was a whole thing. Like even just that little part of it. I think people don't understand how hard it is for artists who aren't born in America to work in America and live in America.
Yeah. See, I always forget that part and I keep forgetting that I'm a Canadian artist and there's so many other levels to it. Like I just literally this week reapplied for another visa and, you know, other artists like in America don't have to think about it. But yeah, as a Canadian artist, there's so many other levels or like logistical things that you have to like think about and worry about.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, you know, I saw something going around. I don't know what it is. I didn't look into it too much, that the visa requirements might be getting harder soon or that it's going to get more expensive. And I mean, for independent artists, especially in our little world, and especially for someone in the position you're in, which is, you know, you're doing well, but it's still building and you're still, you know, you can tell like you haven't gotten to where you're going quite yet. That it's tough, man, when just stuff like even being able to work at all becomes more expensive. The margins for people doing what we do are very thin at this level.
Yeah. And I feel like as artists, you also have so many expenses and like everything you make always goes back into your art, your music, and touring is also so expensive. So to have visa prices also go up. I remember when I was getting my first visa, I've now gotten like 2 since then. But when I was getting my first visa, I couldn't even afford it at that point. And my production school, Cosmic Academy, sponsored me for it because I couldn't afford to like even go on tour or like pay for the visa.
Well, the good thing they were there to do that, man. That's a crazy position to be like, there's actual demand for what I'm doing, but I just can't get there, you know?
I know it's really interesting because from the outside perspective looking in, it looks like, oh my God, you're going on tour, you're making so much money. But in the beginning, it's so many expenses. It's like a startup of any business, right? Like you're always pouring in all this money. And like when you're an artist and you've been focusing on your craft for so long, it's not like you have a career where you have like all this money laying around.
Oh, yeah. I always think, you know, people would be surprised to learn that, you know, a lot of their favorite artists who seem like they're living this insane life, which to be fair, the lifestyle is crazy, but the reality of it, especially the financial reality, is like, it's like, you know, you're like mid-level desk job territory financially in like the best situation, you know? Like until you're a huge artist, it's the best you can hope for is like, you know, kind of middle management level pay grade.
See, that's the part that people don't see. And with that, you're also working like 12-hour days. Like you're working night and day more than you would a regular job, but it's one of those things that you pour all your time in and you're always investing,
Yeah.
and you don't see the results till like later down the line. Even if you do, like, if you do see it, if you don't, I feel like I'm in a very lucky position now where like everything I feel like I put in, I see the results, and that's cool. But in the beginning, it's not like that at all.
Oh yeah, it's a crazy thing to do because yeah, you just bet on yourself for a long time, years and years and years, and at the end of it, it might not work. Like it just might not go. And I think yeah, you have to. There is a little bit of you have to either just be able to compartmentalize and just not even think about what if it goes bad, or you have to be one of those people which I am not one of those people, but there are the people who it's just like you believe in yourself so much to the point that in your mind, you're already there. You're already famous or you're already financially stable or whatever the end goal is. And you see a lot of that too, which in some ways I get jealous of.
See, I think that works though. The thing about that is like you're almost manifesting it by believing that you already have these things. So there's like, I've been digging deep into all this and reading so many books and like learning more about spirituality and manifesting and everything. And it is really a true thing when you feel like something is yours and you think like that. It's almost like you're not chasing it. So it's more accessible to you.
Sure.
But I feel like to have that mindset, it's something you have to work on.
Well, I think just as with anything, there's you could take that metaphor and apply it to so many other things. There's like, in relationships, like playing hard to get works because, if in any situation, trying to get a job, anything like that, like if you come on super thirsty and needy and people can tell that you're kind of desperate for it, you're setting yourself back already, right? Like you're already in a bad position. Whereas if you show up extremely confident and you know what you're doing and it's like, yeah, we're here, this is like an obvious thing. In any part of life, I think that sets you up better. Because yeah, the manifestation thing is interesting because I'm not I wouldn't say, I don't know. I'm spiritual to an extent, but I don't go too far. And the like kind of more woo-woo side of manifesting, I don't know how much I buy it, but I absolutely buy the fact that if you get in the right mindset to be like, this is where I'm supposed to be, I'm good at this, that kind of thing, of course that's going to help you in any number of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like it works in the way of like, you almost like want this thing. So you write it down, maybe you put it on your wall and then you keep seeing it and you keep being reminded that this is something that you really want to happen. But it's not just like you do that and then you go on and like you like lay in bed for a week and don't do anything about it. It's like you're actively also working towards this goal and this thing. And that's why it becomes your reality.
Yeah.
But I've been actually thinking about this a lot lately because I've just been talking to a lot of people, a lot of artists, a lot of people just starting out. And I feel like my approach to this has always been like, I got into this just because I wanted to learn about it and learn how to do it. I wanted to just learn how to DJ and do one show and that was it. And that was kind of my beginnings is I just wanted to learn. I didn't want like to be this big star. I didn't know that I could be. And I think that's the thing that's always like kept me moving. And to this day, I'm always thinking about, oh, I want to learn and I want to be better. And every single day just feels like this new journey and this new thing that I'm learning. And I feel like that's what keeps pushing me.
Right. Well, where are you at with it right now then? Like, is there something in particular you're learning at the moment or something you're delving into that, is particularly catching your interest right now?
I feel like I'm on a very crazy energy lately because I just went through a very, I want to say difficult, like 7 months of my life, probably like one of the most difficult periods of my life. And I learned so much through it and I've come out of the other side. And now I've really come back to being more myself than I ever have been. And I feel like this new energy that, I can really do anything that I want. And everything just feels like a fresh slate.
Well, I mean, that's great to hear, and nice work for getting through it. Is it to sort of set the stage? What was going on 7 months ago, or whenever it was when maybe the bad period started?
I believe this was right after EDC. I had decided to part ways with the team that I was working with. So my current managers at the time. And it was something that I felt like was necessary for me. And it was something that just felt like was right, but it was just a really difficult decision to come to because, my mentality was always that I wanted to win with the people that I started with.
Yep.
And it was really, really hard for me to make that decision because where I was at that point in my life was like, I was just this bright-eyed girl that was like new to the music industry. And I'm like, oh, I just played like main stage at EDC. And, I was just so excited about everything. And there's so much I didn't know. And I just had this feeling that like, this is something that I need. And I feel like I need to go venture off and like learn a lot of things. And at that time, it just made sense to kind of to part ways and go and learn. And I didn't know at that time what I was kind of setting myself up for, but it ended up being like some of the most challenging and rewarding like times of my life so far.
So, leading up to this, like you played EDC, you're on main stage. It's like, it's a big moment in an artist's career. And outside of that, I think from an outsider's perspective, there's just been buzz building around you, like everything you had been doing was going well, building, getting bigger, that kind of thing. You hit this big milestone moment. And, that decision to leave the people you're working with, to set off on your own. I mean, it's scary at any point because, of course, not only is it like leaving behind something familiar, something how it works, but it's also you've kind of gotten to this bigger level but now you're actually choosing for yourself to have less resources for a time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a scary moment. At that time, was the feeling for you kind of just, this is getting really big and we are not equipped to deal with it on this level yet? And that's kind of why a change is needed?
That was part of it. It just felt like, I feel like there was a lot of things involved, but it felt like there's so many things I wanted to do and things were just getting so busy and I felt like I needed more help.
Yeah.
And it kind of just felt right as much as it was really difficult because I have so much love for them and, everything they did for me. And it genuinely felt like a breakup. Like the first period of that, I definitely cried and I was so sad because it's a business relationship, but it's also a personal relationship because you work with these people, you're like really caring about them.
And you're talking to them every day. I think that kind of relationship is unique in the sense that it's like, you talk to maybe your family or maybe somebody you're dating, but outside of that, it's really your team. You talk to them more than anyone else in your life, right? It becomes, like you said, this very intimate thing where the line between business and personal can get super blurred, for better or for worse. Sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that can end up biting you in the end. And I'm not saying you are one way or the other, but it's a hard thing to navigate, and it's a hard thing to sort of rein in if you feel like it's not working anymore.
I know it's also just really tough to figure it out at such an early point in your career. I feel like as much as I've been doing this for a long time, I feel like until I started really touring, I feel like I wasn't actually doing this yet.
Sure. Yeah, there's levels to it. It's like, it is funny. I think about that with myself and with other artists I talk to too, is when you're starting off or when you're at just a certain level, it can feel like, you get your first couple big accomplishments or the first couple things you really were hoping on come through. And at the time that feels like, oh, it's here we go, it's happening now. But then a year or two passes, you do some more stuff and you look back on it and it's like, oh, well, that wasn't anything. That thing I used to think was a big deal, that wasn't anything. And, this is a whole, I hadn't even imagined how complex or weird or all the decisions I'd have to make at this point. It is one of those funny things. You can never realize it in the moment.
I know nobody can warn you about it. Nobody can tell you about it. It's very interesting you say that, because it really does feel like different levels to it, where you face all these challenges and then like you overcome it, you learn new things and you're like, oh yeah, like I got it, like I'm good. And then all of a sudden you like hit this new level in your career where you have to start worrying about like different things, or like if you're headlining, it's completely different than like going support on someone's tour. It's like all these different things that get added to your plate that like you've never dealt with yet. So you're kind of navigating. And during that period of time, I think once that decision was made and once it was happening, it was just really me being so new to this and navigating everything on my own, which was difficult, but now looking back, very rewarding.
So yeah, I mean, let's dig into it a little bit. So, you part ways with your old team, you're on your own. Were you immediately looking for a new team, or just take me through that time period? Like, where were you at mentally then?
I think at that point, I just really wanted to do right with the people that I was with, because I do really care about them and they're such incredible people. So I didn't have a backup. I didn't have any plans. I was like, I'm going to go and figure it out. And that was like right before festival season for summertime. So I was also booked to be doing 1 or 2 festivals a week during that period of time. And I started kind of going through this process of talking to like interviewing and talking to a bunch of different managers in the music industry to figure out like kind of who the right fit is for me and what works, what doesn't work. So I would be spending pretty much all my weekdays where I'd be in LA, just doing meetings with people and trying to kind of get to the bottom of like, what is it exactly that I'm looking for and who is the right person for me? Like who else is there that I'm not thinking about? Like just so many different things. And then on the weekends, I'd be performing, like I'd be on the road doing like 1 or 2 festivals and doing like all this on my own. And in the beginning, I was just like so motivated and I was like, yo, I can do anything and I'm going to like figure this out so quickly and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And like, this is such an exciting time period. And I just kept doing that. Like, I think I did that pretty much the entire summer, but by the time it was like getting to the end of the summer, I feel like it started really taxing on me because at a certain point I was just waking up, no morning routine, nothing. And I'm a big, like, take care of yourself, workout, morning routine type of girl. And at that point I was like, there's just so much to do that I'd be waking up, get on my laptop right away, start working. And I would basically just go until I would pass out, and I would just do that every single day. And I realized like I would just be isolating myself for like 2 weeks at a time, except for the shows. So like I'd just be like on my laptop all day and night, and then I'd go play a festival and come back. And at first it was fine because like I love what I do and I love working hard, but eventually I feel like it all started to really catch up.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and to kind of paint the picture a little more too, when you're talking about, playing the festivals on the weekend and the search for people to work with. And in the meantime, it's not as simple as just like a couple days a week you get on a plane and go, stand on a stage for an hour. There's all this other stuff that a team would be taking care of for you in terms of, buying a flight, something as simple as buying a flight, routing you, where are you staying, once you get to the festival, like what visuals are going to be on stage while you're playing, all these little details, each one of which is fine, but you put them all together and you're spending hours a day just sort of putting out fires and staying on top of business, right? Without even really pushing the ball forward. It's just taking care of the stuff that's right in front of you, you know?
Yeah, you couldn't have said that better yourself. It's not like you're doing anything crazy or like adding to it. It's kind of just like, this is what's in front of me and I need to deal with it. And you keep dealing with it. You do things and then more things just keep piling on. So like during that period, I was just like in manager mode and I had to make a lot of sacrifices. And I knew I was making these sacrifices because I felt like I didn't really have another choice at that time, because I kept just thinking like, yeah, I'm going to figure this out by like next week. I'm going to make this decision. And I just also felt a lot of pressure around me because people were telling me like, yeah, you need to hurry up and kind of like pick someone and start working with someone. But to me, I knew like this is my child, like this project, like all my music and everything. Like I worked so hard and I wanted to give myself the time. So I didn't want to rush myself, and I'm really glad that I didn't.
Yeah. But, well, I was going to ask you on that note, like, did you get some weird reactions from people? Because I think there's kind of this weird stigma for artists who are managing themselves, especially once you get to like the festival level. And I went through this a little bit. I had like an interim period. This is many, many years ago where I was between managers, but yeah, still touring and doing that kind of thing. And it's weird the reaction you get from like a promoter who's emailing, looking to talk to your tour manager, your manager to figure out the stuff. And you're like, no, it's just me. And here's what I'm talking about. And you would think logically that people would, that's an easier way to work almost, because it's a more direct communication and less people to go through, less of a telephone game. But I would always feel this weird reaction that people it was almost like a dirty thing of people like, oh, it's just you doing it. Like people would almost take you less seriously, which is an interesting, I don't know. It's like a social experiment.
I know it is interesting because there are so many weird stigmas within the music industry about all of that stuff. And I think people also look at you and they're like, oh, like, why don't you have a manager? Like, why? And I also at that point, I was like, well, I'm going to figure it out. And like next week, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. So like, people told me like, oh, you can make a fake email.
Sure. I've done that. I've absolutely done that. Yeah.
I did that like back in the day, but I was like, I'm good. Like, I don't need to make a fake email. Like, I'm just going to like boss it up. I'm gonna just manage myself. It's going to be good. But I feel like the stigma definitely did exist as well. But I also feel like I probably just felt it more than anyone around me, just because I was like, how am I doing this massive festival? I'm like playing main stages and like no team. I didn't even have a TM, anything. Like I was booking my flights. Like I would spend like one day in a week, like 8 hours just booking flights, booking hotels. And like,
it takes so much time. It's crazy.
I know. I have so much appreciation for managers and agents and everybody on the back end of the industry, because there's so much that goes into it that you don't see as the artist.
Yeah. How did it go for you? Like you said, at a certain point, it really started wearing you down. Were you like, how did it manifest for you? Just like exhausted all the time? That kind of thing?
Well, I'm someone that we spoke about this last time too, that I'm such a DIY person. I'm like, I will figure it out. I will work all the time. I'm good. Like I tend to overwork myself sometimes. And at that point, I was talking to a lot of people, getting advice from like people I knew in the music industry, talking to like labels and just friends that I had. And I was getting so many opinions that I was just starting to feel so exhausted.
Right.
And then I had so many people's opinions of like what I should do, who I should work with, like what I shouldn't do, like what I should do with my career moving forward. And I feel like near the end of the summer, I just started to get so worn down by it all, because I just was not taking care of myself. I wasn't sleeping. And I had all these people's opinions in my head. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe what I'm doing right now, like, isn't good. Maybe I need to change this. Maybe I need to like change this. And I kind of fell into this like loop where I was like listening to everyone else and I stopped listening to myself.
Yeah.
And then I was just so exhausted that I hit this wall, and I knew I was like burning myself out. And I've done this in the past before where I've burned myself out, but so like I'm aware of the feeling. I know when it's coming and I know when it's happening. But this time it was just so aggressive, and I felt like I couldn't stop because I couldn't just be like, hey, like I need a week. I need the weekend off.
Right.
I'm like, I felt guilty because I'm like, I'm about to go do this big festival. I need to be on it. I need to be on my game. Like I can't slow down now. So I'm just going to try to like push through this burnout.
Well, that's another thing, right? Is throughout all of this, I'm sure also there's pressure to be working on new music and putting stuff out and keeping this momentum that you've got, which is hard to get, right? Like it's like once you get that momentum, it's really then it almost becomes more intense. Like people think that, you know, the intense part is just getting to the party, but it's actually once you're there, it kind of just keeps ratcheting up because once you have it, it can feel so easy to lose it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I have to imagine just like, yeah, time for creativity. I'm sure that wasn't as much fun anymore either.
Yeah. I think that was one of the most difficult sacrifices I had to make during that time. I had a lot of music that I'd made kind of like the year prior to that. So I tried to get everything set up for like the rest of the year, but it was so hard to like get into the studio and sit down. Like I tried a couple times, but like I was so exhausted. I literally passed out in the studio and I realized I was like, I think this is just something I need to maybe take a little break from and try to figure all of this out. Cause on top of it, my mental health was like, just like the worst it's ever been. And I'm like trying to just hold everything together. And at that point I was like, I don't even know what's happening anymore. I was just like struggling.
Were you able to have much of a life outside of any of that?
No, not at all. Like there was a point where a couple of my artist friends were in town, and whenever they come in, I try to go see them to support because I love them so much. And I had spent probably like 2 weeks just like working nonstop. This was like in the thick of it. And I hadn't gone out or done anything for myself, like outside of like music. And this was the first time I went out for like 2 hours with a friend. And I just remember like being there and I'm like, oh my God, like this is what it feels like to be a person and to dance and like have fun. I'm like I forget what this feeling is like.
Yeah, which is it's so funny to put it that way because that's a real thing that can happen, especially when what we do for work is, you know, going out to the club and dancing around and all that. But it's when we're doing it as a performer, the fun part of it, it is fun, but it's fun in a different way. It's not the kind of fun that like is necessary for life. You know what I mean? It's not the kind of it's weird. It's like a different kind of human experience where sometimes you kind of just need to put yourself back in the place of like, no, I'm just like, yeah, I'm a random person in a random place having a good time watching a thing, you know, and I think it's so important to kind of put yourself back into regular life, for lack of a better term. But it's a hard thing to do. Like saying it sounds obvious, but then when you're in the middle of it, like you're talking about, especially kind of trying to figure it out, like it sounds like you were at this time, it can be really hard to find that time.
Yeah, it's very hard to navigate. And like you're human, you need to do those things. You need to let loose and you need to just go be an idiot sometimes, you know? I feel like being an idiot is the most inspiring thing because like you just feel so like fueled. I love being an idiot these days.
Yeah, 100%. I love being an idiot too. It's the perfect way to put it. And it's so necessary. Like that's to take it back to what we were talking about a minute ago of like having the confidence to think you can do it and all that, that's sort of being an idiot, is being like, oh, sure, this is easy. I can do this. It's because it's fun, so I'll just go do it because it's fun. And that to me is also being an idiot. And there's something beautiful about that. It's the way anything gets done, is people just, assuming they can do something because they're excited about it. Like that, I think that's kind of beautiful,
It is. And the cool thing about that too is like when you do that, your bandwidth of what you're capable of doing just like keeps stretching and getting bigger. Like it's really difficult at first, but then you're just able to handle more and handle more until you hit a breaking point.
Sure.
So try to not do that.
which is also hard. Yeah. Hard to see when that's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too that, you'll tell people what you're trying to do. I don't know if you had these kind of experiences early on, but, it's hard for anyone else to believe that you're capable of doing a crazy thing until you do it, and so you do kind of have to have that idiocy a little bit to just be like, yeah, I know, it's like, yeah, this is probably close to impossible, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's like, it's sort of a stupid decision to make, but then you have to make it if you want to even see if it's possible.
I know it's a little bit crazy. Like looking back now, I'm like how? Like now I obviously have an incredible team. So it's such a different experience where I'm like, I look back at it, I'm like, how was I surviving like that before? It was just like, I wasn't even being human for like probably 6 months straight. I'm just like, struggle, just trying to figure this out, get to the bottom of it, trying to get my mental health to a better place. But at the same time, just literally holding everything together. And like, nobody knew either. Like from the outside looking in, it just looks like everything is fine. Like most people didn't even know that I didn't have a manager. I was managing myself, and most people still have no idea.
Right, of course. Well, so how does it resolve then? Was it one of those things where you just gave yourself enough time that eventually you sort of figured out the right solution? Or was there like an event or something more concrete that happened that like snapped everything into place?
I think I hit this point where I realized that like my mental health was not doing well, and I was starting to experience anxiety for the first time in my life. Like I would just be waking up with my heart just racing.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I've had that.
Yeah. And I'm the type of girl, like I'm waking up like dancing in the morning. I'm like, let's start, like let's freaking go. And I was just waking up with like anxiety and like just I had so many like feelings that I couldn't even understand yet, because I feel like I didn't even have time to like process it all. And I was just trying to keep moving forward. And I feel like I just really hit this wall where I was just so like down and struggling and sad and feeling so anxious. And I just realized that at that point, it didn't make sense to like even bring anyone on, because I was like, I just feel like I'm not going to be my best self, and I need to figure this out for myself right now. And I just told myself, like, just keep like working on it and try to get back into like healthier routines and working out and everything. And I just kept moving forward. And I hit this like, I think I hit this really big breaking point where I was just so burned out and like exhausted that I felt like I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'd woken up one morning and I was just crying all the time. Like it'd just be like all the time. Like I'd literally open my laptop and I'd just start crying. And I'm like, why am I crying? Like, why is this happening right now? I'm trying to figure it out. But there was one morning that I woke up and I just like, I wasn't tired or anything. I just didn't want to get out of bed. And I just kept laying in bed and I was like, just feeling so miserable and bad for myself and just not wanting to do anything. And I kind of just laid there until eventually I realized like I'd been doing this and I'd been so miserable for like a good period of time. And I was like, just realizing like nobody is going to save me. Nobody can give me advice. Nobody can help figure this out for me. And like, this is all on me. And if I want to like be that kind of artist, if I want to be that kind of person, I need to like save myself and I need to start showing up. And I literally jumped out of bed and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, this is not the kind of person I want to be. And I refuse to live like this. And I refuse to be this person. And I jumped into my car. I was like the most aggressive thing. I got into my car and I went to the gym and I lifted the heaviest weights I've ever lifted. And I was like, I'm not going back. I'm not going to be that person. I know this is going to be hard and I'm going to like push through and I'm going to figure this out. And I was in the gym like 7 a.m. every single morning, like for the next like 2 weeks. And I started making a lot of changes in my life to really turn everything around.
Well, it's interesting you say, that you realized at a certain point that maybe it wasn't even the right time to bring in a new team or to start working with people, which, ostensibly that was like the whole point of it, right? It was like to try to find a new situation. But I think that's so important because I think anyone can relate to that feeling of like searching for something, being in a transitional moment. It's not happening the way you thought it would or as fast as you wanted it to. And that frustration of like, why? What's the problem? Like, I feel like I'm doing everything right and I'm putting in a lot of effort and that kind of thing. And I think what you said is sort of perfect, that sometimes it's not you could be doing all the right stuff, but you could sort of be neglecting your own part of that equation, and like what like how you're approaching it, I guess, and like your mindset, because it can be so easy to, I was relating to what you're saying of like, yeah, I'll just do it all myself. I can handle all of this. Like it's, we'll just work through it. Like, because I'm the same way. Like I don't have I can write an email, I can book a flight. It's no problem. But yeah, if you kind of just get into that mode where you're just like, well, I'm okay, so I'm doing it all, so why isn't it working? Sometimes, yeah, you gotta take that step back and look internally rather than sort of just, okay, I guess I'll cast the net wider. It's sometimes you got to go smaller, but it's hard to see that, man. That's a fun. I mean, it's fun to talk about now. It's not a fun moment for you at the time, but from there. Okay, here's the question, I guess. It's like you have this sort of realization, you start, taking better care of yourself, you start hitting the gym, you have this sort of mindset change. Did you notice changes around you once you started thinking differently? Like, did that help?
That's a very good question. I feel like everything started shifting around me. Like every single thing that I was doing in my life just started changing because I believe now that it really was just like me and my mind and like me versus myself.
Yeah.
And that was the thing I needed to figure out at that point. And once I started making these changes, once I started actually putting myself first, like above music, I actually started putting myself first above everything and taking care of myself. It's like, I feel like I started showing up in life very differently and I started attracting all of the like right things that I wanted.
Yeah, I understand. So, I mean, so what happened from that point? Like, how did you eventually end up where you're at now?
That's a good question. I feel like it was a lot of working out, a lot of reading books, a lot of podcasts, and a lot of just genuine working on yourself and working on your craft. And I was still doing a lot of that work, but then I started to be able to handle it better. And I started giving myself a lot of grace to be like, hey, like you can't like do everything. So like, let's just let these things slip and that's fine. Like you don't have to be so on top of everything all the time.
Sure.
So I feel like I started being just better to myself and being like proud of like the little things that I was doing that like were making a difference. And after I did those things for like, I think it was like a couple months, everything just started shifting around me. Like the shows were beginning to get better. Like I just announced my like headline tour, and everything was starting to just like grow organically. And like it was happening while I was like starting to feel better and get in a better place with my life. And once I felt like me again, and I felt like I was showing up as the person that I wanted to be and being kind and like being the loving girl that I am, I felt like, okay, like now I want to like revisit all of this and figure out what that's going to be and start moving into this next phase of my life where I just really get to focus on the art and the music and my shows again.
I mean, yeah, it's really interesting how much your perspective can change once you get into a better headspace or, work on your own health, mental health, physical health, whatever it is, get in routines, get more sleep, any of that. It really is a crazy thing. Like we all know we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to take care of ourselves. We're supposed to get sleep. So it's an obvious thing to say, but I think it's still kind of somehow underrated even after all of that, because I have to imagine, you're talking to all these different management teams, you have all these options you're trying to evaluate, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like once you sort of take care of yourself, take a step back, reapproach those decisions, probably becomes a much easier, clearer decision, right?
Oh my God, 100%. Because I look back, I'm like, when I started that process, I was just not in the greatest place in my life. And I had a lot of clouded judgment, I would say. And I had so many other people's opinions. And it's like, I almost just had to work through that and come back to my own and think about like, well, what do I want? And the thing that's always worked for me in my career that's like led me to where I am now is following my heart and doing what I think is dope and what feels like exciting to me. It's never been about like, oh, like you should do this to become successful, or you should make this kind of music, or you should be this person. It's always just been like me being me and being like, oh, this is really dope. I want to do this.
Yeah. And I think that's originally, I feel like that's what drew people to you and still does draw people to you. I think I was listening back to the first podcast we did, and I was trying to say some version of that too when I was talking about the music you make and the sound and the vibe of it, that it really does. There's like this DIY energy to it. Beyond the fact that you are a DIY person and you do a lot of it yourself, I think that attitude comes through in the music too. And yeah, I think that's a good note for anybody is, trying to sort of stay true to the person you were when you got into it in the first place. And that initial excitement I think that's always a good guiding principle, that like, if you get lost, you can always kind of look back to, well, what was I thinking about? How did I approach it back then? And like, are there parts of that I could sort of incorporate now? If you get lost, I think that's always a good place to go. It's just like, well, what did I used to do? When it was simpler, because that's always, people can kind of tell when you have that energy, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's just very important to, in those moments, come back to yourself and just think about like what you want rather than what other people might want for you or think is the thing that's going to work for you.
Yeah.
Like anytime I've listened to someone else and it didn't feel right, and I was like, yeah, like I'll try it out just to see like if I like it. It's never worked out. But anytime I've done something where like I'm excited about it and I'm like, this really came from the heart, it feels good, it's always worked out.
Yeah. It's this weird push-pull where you have to be open to other people's ideas, and you have to be open to be able to let yourself try new things and experiment and evolve and change. But you can't let other people's view of what you do just direct all of your decisions, Like at the end of the day, no matter who it is, no matter if it's someone you work with or a family member, someone you're close to, it doesn't matter if you really don't connect with what they're telling you and you try it and it feels weird or, whatever it may be. it's hard to do, man. But yeah, you have to stick to your guns at the end of the day, because no one can see what your vision is except for you. At any time, you're the only. It's all in your head. You can show little pieces of it to people. You put out songs that is like your best version of like, this is really, the closest to like what I see in my head. Here you go. But it's always just going to be in your head, right? Like you got to stay true to that.
Yeah. And also following just what you think is dope. Because I don't know, if you ever like make a song just because you're like, oh, like this is the thing that's like hot right now, so let me like hop on this trend, and then you do it and there's no heart or soul in it. I don't know. I guess people might do it and it might work for them, but I just feel like for me, it feels so wrong and I can't do it.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, your music sounds like you, which is, I think, like that's really what everyone should be trying to strive for, is that regardless of what it sounds like, regardless of where it fits in, that you listen to it, you get a sense of who made it. Like that is really, at the end of the day, that's what I want out of art. That's what I want out of an artist. It's like, who is this person that made this thing? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. And I feel like as an artist too, it is some people might know like right away, but I feel like it's such a process to also discover exactly what it is you want to do with your art. Because I know myself, and since day one, I've been like, this is what I want to do. And then like, I keep evolving to new versions of myself. And then I keep evolving on that vision, and what I want just keeps kind of expanding.
Sure, of course. Yeah. And you don't have to have all the answers, but I think it comes back to what you were saying, is like, you always have to just do what you think is dope, the thing that you think is cool. And as much as possible, don't lose sight of it. And kind of, that moment when you were laying in bed there and had that realization, it's like, you really do have to check in with yourself periodically to be like, are we still on track? Like, are the decisions I'm making still for those same reasons? Or, have I gotten distracted because there's a lot of other stuff going on? And I think, that never really goes away. It's a constant thing. You kind of have to keep checking in with yourself.
100%. I feel like it gets kind of difficult to check in with yourself when you get so busy with like, you're living your dream life. Like you're playing these festivals that you've always dreamed about playing, and you're getting to do music full time. And like, you've literally dreamed of this forever. And then all of a sudden you're in this place where you can't even enjoy it, because like, you're just like, mental health is struggling, and you're like, what the hell is happening? And you feel so guilty.
Right.
For like feeling that way, because you want to just appreciate everything. And I feel like it really is like coming back to yourself. And I also do got to say though, that I feel like the shows were what kept me going during that time too. Like the shows and the fans were like what really kind of gave me life.
Yeah.
And like, if I was struggling or having the worst day of my life, it's like the minute that I was like at that show or like seeing everybody, it kind of just gave me like more inspiration to just keep moving forward.
Well, yeah. Isn't that an interesting thing too, where, we're talking about this period where you got a little lost for a minute and we're trying to figure it out. But then you go to these shows and there's people there who know your music and are excited to see you. And it's such a cool validation that like, maybe you lost your way for a second, but then the people who like what you do, they kind of still knew, like that to me is a cool thought, where that's almost an indication that it's like, yeah, we got to figure this out, because the people haven't changed. They're still here because you did something they're excited about and they want to, experience it with you and all that. And so to me, yeah, that's kind of a beautiful thing, that like you can get lost in your own head, but then something you've already done, it's like you're still kept on the track because of previous actions and previous decisions, right? So it's like, okay, well, I knew what I was doing at some point, so this is maybe a good clue that like the answer, you got to keep pushing forward, right?
That's so interesting. I haven't like thought of it like that before.
Because I think sometimes an artist gets lost and you can kind of tell, right? And I think the energy for that artist dies down a little too while they're going through whatever they're going through. And yeah, if they don't figure it out, or if they don't pull out of it, or if they make some wild change that people aren't ready for, it could be a million different things. But yeah, sometimes like that energy from your audience or people who like what you do, whatever you want to call them, can kind of go away. But if it's still there, I think that's sort of a good indicator that's like, yeah, no, like this is on track. So this isn't a world problem. This is a me problem,
Yeah, it's literally just like the only thing that is wrong right now is just the way that you're feeling. Right. And yeah. You have to get to the bottom of it. And see, I'm so grateful and lucky because I really I have the most incredible fans, and I had such incredible supporters during that time where nobody knew that anything was wrong right. at all. And when I'm at the shows, I have the biggest smile on my face and I'm having the best time. The shows are really the thing that brought me so much life. And the fans are really what inspired me to want to keep doing better and kept pushing me, because even that day when I was laying in bed, I'm like, I've literally built this for the last, since 2018. And I've been working on this for so long. And I have people that are so excited about my music and my shows, and they have tickets to come and see me. I need to show up better, and I want to give them a show, and I want to be able to give them all of me. And I don't want to show up having just cried and being sad. I'm like, why am I not why am I not enjoying this? Me a year and a half ago would be like, yo, you're crazy. You're playing a festival and you're struggling through the week. Why?
Yeah, right. Of course. Well, and I mean, it seems like at this point, I was looking at your social media, and you just did this big sold out LA show. It's like all this good shit is happening. And that, I saw some clips of that LA show. It's crazy. People going wild, loving what you were doing, that kind of thing. Was that one of your bigger headline shows to this point?
That was my biggest headline show yet.
Yeah, there you go. So and I don't have to ask you how it was. It was obvious. I'm sure it was fucking great. I'm sure it was a blast. But I mean, do you feel like you've kind of gotten through it at this point? Because you've got the tour you announced, you've got the new EP. From the outside, it's like, okay, all the pieces are there. It's going good. Do you feel like you're back in it at this point?
I am at the best place I've ever been in my life, which is crazy to say considering what I just went through. But I feel like in a crazy way, everything that happened was the best thing that could have happened, because as much as it was difficult, all of those little things that I dealt with every single day made me such a strong human, made me so much more capable, and made me learn so much. I feel like I truly learned about what the music industry really is. And now I understand everything that goes into it and everything that even goes into my project. So now I'm able to just approach things from, I feel like, a smarter way and do things in a way that's more, how do I say this? In a way that's more true to myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. And I mean, that's a great place to be. Is it, just to finish the story, because I was just thinking, I was like, I bet people would want to hear the end. How did you eventually decide on the people you ended up working with? What was kind of the end of that whole story?
Ooh, so I talked to a lot of really incredible people, and it was also a really hard decision just because everybody you talk to is so good at what they do. And, people I've looked up to for a long time. But with the current team that I started working with recently, I feel like everything just clicked. From the very first message I sent to them, it's just everything went so smooth. They were so on it and so on the same page that I didn't even feel like I had to really explain myself ever, which was really crazy. It's I would say something and they would just match that energy right away.
Yep.
And it just, from the beginning of the process, it just felt so seamless, and nothing was there's not one thing that's standing out that hey, this wouldn't work. And it just felt right. And I was like, you know what? Like all the signs are leading to this being the thing. And I went forward with it, and I started working with them beginning of the year.
Still pretty new, yeah.
And it's definitely new, but it's already like it's been a very crazy experience because like they just match my energy so well. And before I was like sitting down, like sending emails all day or like figuring out the business stuff. And now I'm like maybe I'll spend like an hour in the day, like sending emails, whatever. And I just have like one of my managers sitting there, like I'll send like 10 emails and then like she's sending me like a bunch of emails too. And I'm like, it's such an inspiring thing because I'm no longer just like in this alone. And I was never like, I wasn't in this alone because I do have incredible agents and they were very supportive too. But I feel like having managers and people that you're talking to day is just a very inspiring thing because you don't feel like you're like taking on the weight of the world,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah, you're doing it together. I mean, that's like, that's basic like tribalism stuff. That's basic team building kind of stuff. It's like there's so much value in that, and just feeling like not only that somebody's got your back, but that you're doing it together. Like doing it with people feels completely different than doing it yourself. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but you almost can't compare. It's very different things. And I liked what you said about matching your energy too, because I think that's a good note for anybody too. It's probably the most important thing is just finding someone who matches your energy, who sort of instinctively understands what you're trying to tell them, where you're trying to go. I think that's much more important than any connections anyone might have or any kind of cloud or doors they might be able to open or a big name behind, all of that's fine, but it doesn't matter at all when you're talking about just someone who's on the same page as you as far as what you're trying to do.
100%, because at the end of the day, like nobody's connections, they might be able to help, but nobody's connections are going to make things happen for you. At the end of the day, it's your art and your vision and the shows that you're putting on, the music that you're putting out, and that's what's going to actually make things happen for you. So it doesn't matter like what connection somebody has or all these things. It just matters that you have people that like really get you and they're like excited and they work just as hard as you.
Musically, where are you at as far as that goes? Do you feel like you've changed anything? Now that you kind of had this mental reset, you're in a good place. Has anything changed for you as a producer? The music you're writing? Do you have things you're working on? New EP aside, like where are you at musically these days?
See, I had to take like a proper like 1 or 2 months to focus on everything else. And now that I've come back to it in a crazy way, I feel like my ears are better and my taste has gotten better.
Yeah.
Which is really wild because I'm like, I took that break, right? And now I'm coming back with almost like fresh ears, fresh perspective. And I've been spending pretty much all week this week in the studio. Like I was in the studio till like 3 a.m. last night. And I can genuinely say I'm making the best music in my life, and I'm making music that feels very true to me. And I feel like I know exactly like what it is that I want the energy to be because of everything that happened.
Is there anything you're working on right now? Like, I don't know. I guess the question is more sort of what are you excited about right now that's going on for your project? Like has the tour started yet, or is it about to start?
It started in November. So I've been like properly on tour, Supah Fly tour since November. And now I believe there's 6 more dates on the tour.
Okay.
It's kind of like the bigger shows were like at the end of the tour. So now we're kind of moving into that. So yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, that's good. And is this first headline tour or yeah? Has it felt, I mean, you said earlier you felt a difference between the considerations you have for when you're doing a headline tour versus supporting someone else's tour. Is there anything about like going through this tour, this process, especially now that you're getting into the bigger shows and it's going well, Is there anything that like surprised you about it? Anything you learned in this process?
I've definitely learned a lot because I went last year, I was doing like mostly support shows and I was on other people's tours. And this year, like I'm going and being like, hey, this is my show. Like I hope you come out, and it's been such a different experience because people are buying tickets to come and see you. It's not like people are going to see someone else and you just so happen to be on the lineup. Like people are coming to see you. They want to hear your music. They want to like yell the words to your songs. And like every single show that I've done has just been filled with so much love and excitement. And most of the shows, like when the set is done, most people will like stick around because they know I'm gonna like jump on the dance floor and like take pictures with everybody and like meet everybody and hug everyone. It's just been a lot of love, and I feel like a lot of support just through the tour and seeing the fans show up, because this is also my first time doing this and first time really being like, hey, we're gonna see how this tour goes, and it's been like exceeding all of my expectations.
Has it? There might not be an answer for this because it's still so fresh and you're still doing the tour. But does it make the way you think about future tours different? Like now that you've kind of had this experience of doing your first headline tour, are there things where you're like, oh, next time, maybe we could try this, or maybe I could approach it this way?
Oh, 100%. I feel like the tour has inspired me a lot, not only for shows, but also for the music that I'm making. Because now that I've done this, I know what I'm capable of, and I just want to make the shows doper and doper and doper and put on like the shows that like I've always dreamed about. And I've already been doing that, but I want to just really keep evolving everything and keep putting on really crazy experiences for the fans to come and enjoy with me.
Yeah, I mean, what's so once the tour is done, what does life look like for you after that?
See, tour finishes, but then she's not going to be off of tour.
Yeah, I mean,
I swear to God, I haven't
finished.
stopped touring.
Yeah, the tour never actually ends. That's the other part people don't know is
the tour never ends. Yeah. The flyers end, but then you're still on tour every weekend. Grateful for that, honestly.
Oh, of course.
That's the coolest thing ever.
Not a complaint, love being, but yeah, it's funny.
I know. After the tour, so the tour ends in March. So then it's going into Miami Music Week. And then I'm doing a few festivals that weekend and then moving into festival season, which is going to be really insane this year. And a lot of new music coming. I think closer to spring and summertime is when I'm going to really be revealing the next phase of Nostalgix.
This is a great update. This is like, it's rare I get to do one of these podcasts where we kind of just really focus on like a little bit of time and really dig into someone's experience that way. So I appreciate it because I love having conversations like this.
Me as well. And I think it's really cool coming back from the first time that we did this, because I genuinely was just like, I had no idea about anything. I was just like this girl, like sitting in a basement 12 hours a day, like making beats. Right. And now like I'm living in America. I'm like playing these like dream festivals and like doing my dream shows. And it's just such a different life. Like I still have the same morals, but very different person, or evolved person, I would say.
Yeah. No, I mean, growing up or maturing, whatever you want to call it, sort of while you're in the middle of all this, it's a hard thing to do. And it's an interesting experience, I would say, because it's not that you're a kid or anything, but you're still young, and we're still changing while we're also putting ourselves forward as this artist that, we want people to pay attention to. And, the artist has one identity, but then your identity as a person is sort of malleable, right? And over time it changes, and you learn things and you gain wisdom and you become a different person to a certain extent. And doing that all at the same time is, I guess, as we just talked about, it can be fun, but it can also be kind of a lot to juggle.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How do you find the separation of like yourself as an artist and yourself as like a person, like day to day?
I'm better at it now than I used to be. It's kind of one of those things that I don't know if I had a light bulb moment for it, but it just sort of happened and I got more comfortable with it over time. These days, it's pretty easy. I think weirdly, the pandemic helped me a little bit with that, just because it was such a forced shutdown that after a while, I couldn't even make myself feel nervous or anxious about the stuff I used to be nervous or anxious about, as far as like the pressure of like, oh, I got to put up a post. Oh, I got to, send these emails so I can make sure these shows happen, all this, whatever it might have been. It was so not an option that by the time everything came back, I was in a better headspace where I was like, oh yeah, I don't need to worry about that. And kind of like you were saying earlier, the more I take care of myself, the less I worry about it in the anxious, unproductive way, the better it's going to go anyway. And so for me, I don't know. I've always been pretty good about making time for things I care about that aren't my job. So like, I have like a few hobbies, and same as you, I go to the gym a lot, that kind of thing. And once you sort of put that into a routine, again, I'm also a very routine based person. Once you sort of just establish that like, no, this is how life works. I wake up and I do these things that aren't my job. And then after that, I go and do my job. And then at night, I go do something fun, whatever it works for you. I think setting it as a routine really helped me too, now that I'm kind of talking it out. But it's, it's always an evolving process, and the line's always going to be a little blurry for what we do. Yeah, I think you got to just like set time aside for it, intentionally don't do it sometimes. Like I was just talking to somebody about this, this idea in the music industry that you have to be on all the time. You have to be grinding the whole, there's like this romantic notion of the grind and like just doing it 24/7 and no sleep and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's kind of just, that's fake. It's like, that doesn't actually work. Maybe that can work for a short period of time. And maybe if you're working really hard with a group of people who are all passionate about it, that can be cool and you can get something out of it, but it's not a long-term solution.
No, it's literally how you burn yourself out and then can't keep moving forward.
Exactly.
And like the whole hustle culture, like you just mentioned, is so, I get it, but you need to take care of yourself. Like don't just not sleep. I shouldn't be giving this advice. One day I'll take it, but like you need sleep, you need to like eat well, you need to take care of yourself. You need to make sure like all of this is doing good so that like as an artist you can be doing good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not one of those things where, because I think some people, when you're in the middle of that, if you get into that hustle mindset and you're like, no sleep, we're on the grind 24/7, whatever it is, it can feel cool in the moment when you're like, oh, I'm doing this. Like I can sleep a couple hours a night and work all the time and look at everything I'm getting done. And like, yeah, I'm crushing it. Like you kind of get in this mindset of like, oh, like I'm doing something special right now. Like I'm going harder than everybody else, and that's going to pay off somehow. Which there are aspects of that mindset that I think can be helpful. But on the other hand, most of the time, if you stop doing that and you get good sleep and you structure your life, you'll be surprised how much more you're able to do in that time, Because the thing with the grind culture to me is like, as the grinding becomes a goal in and of itself, and it doesn't really matter what the result is as long as you're just pushing and pushing and pushing, where it's like, to me, I've found it helpful as a mindset to not do that and to be like, oh no, like I only have a few hours that I'm going to pay attention to this. And in those few hours, we're going to try to get something amazing out of it. And then after that, I'm not going to think about it for a while. And then you come back to it again, and it's, for me, I think that's a better way to go for anybody, but it's definitely been a better way to go for me.
I don't know how you do it though, because it's so hard. Because the lines, I feel like with music and personal life just get blurred so
Of
much when
course.
it's like you're living it and breathing it like day and night. So it's like I personally I love it so much that like I forget to take that time, and it's almost like you have to be disciplined to like set yourself up like that and have that mindset.
I think you just got to be able to, now that we're talking about it, maybe a more clear way to say what I'm trying to say is like you have to have who you are outside of music. Like that person has to exist and have a full life. And then who you are while you're doing music is a separate thing. You know, it's like it's an aspect of you, but it can't be the whole you. I think that's the most concise way I can say what I'm trying to say. It's like the person you are when you're not doing music, that has to be a whole person, you know?
Ooh, you just went off on that mic drop. Are you kidding me? Damn.
That's
Wow.
the way I
Yeah,
feel about it, you
you
know?
really said that well.
Like, because you can eat, sleep, and breathe it for a long time. People eat for years even, but like you can't do it forever, I don't think.
No. And you need to like see, I forget that I'm human sometimes. I swear to God, like I'll
Yeah.
get so busy and like be like, yeah, let's do shows, let's do like these things. I'll be in the studio like 3 days during the week. And then as it's happening, I'm like, oh, okay, like you like forget to make that time for yourself, and you like start neglecting certain areas of your life. Like maybe it's relationships, maybe it's like working out, maybe it's like whatever it is, you have to neglect certain things, because if you're choosing to put your time into one thing, naturally you're going to have to sacrifice something else.
Yeah.
So it's like, are those things worth sacrificing, and how much of it should you sacrifice? And if you're literally miserable and burning yourself out, is it worth it?
Yeah, 100%. And it's, you know, like you, of course, don't get me wrong, you got to work hard to achieve crazy things. This is a hard thing to do in general. Of course, there's going to be sacrifices and you're going to have to push it and all of that kind of stuff. But like, I don't know. I think part of it is just me getting older too. It's like, it's at some point it's going to go away. Like, you know, it's like this eternal, like running up the hill thing. It's not going to be there after a while, you know, like it might be decades, it might be a very long time, but it's like, there has to be something beyond that. Like there's, you know, to me, it's like once you sort of figure out the life part of it of like, what do I actually care about as a person? What's important to me, the person, not me, the musician, not me, the DJ, whatever. But like, you know, what's the point of this outside of music? Then the music thing just becomes a gift, you know, then that's just like, oh, this is just like the coolest part of it all. But when it's everything, at least for me, then it's hard to appreciate it. You know what I mean?
Wow. See, I feel like I struggle sometimes with like having that mindset, and I almost like disconnect from that like version of myself that like is human and like has all these needs and like needs to let loose. Cause I'm just like, yeah, like it's fine. I'll just do this for a short period of time. And then that just keeps building and building. And you never actually like have a break unless you like make it, you know?
For sure. Yeah. And part of that too is like, yeah, like you said, it all just keeps going and going. So there's, you don't have to like be super dramatic with it, but even just in that whole, like, not that you were doing that, but I'm saying like what I just said, I feel like there is kind of, I feel like I'm sounding dramatic about it, but I think it can be as simple as just when you're in the middle of it and it's all going on and you're working all the time and all these crazy things are happening. Sometimes it's just like trying to be present in those moments, you know, and like, because what's the whole point of working yourself to death and all of that if you can't appreciate all the things that are happening around you, you know? Because it's so easy to get focused on just like, okay, we did that, what's the next thing? Okay, we did that, what's the next thing? As opposed to like, look at what we're doing right now, you know? And like, this is, at any level, it's like, hey, this is kind of cool. Let's enjoy this a little and then let's move on, you know? Like, it doesn't have to be like an on or off thing, but I think having those little moments of slowing yourself down, taking a little time to just appreciate the weirdness, the craziness of it. I think that can be super helpful too.
Yeah, to celebrate the small wins rather than just always thinking to like what's next. Cause I feel like it's easy to get caught in that loop because just in music in general, there's so much that you could be doing it like all time, especially with like TikTok and Reels being a thing. Like you can always be doing more, but I think stopping and actually enjoying like what you have in front of you. And I feel like I was so bad at this until probably like January when I started actively like thinking like, oh, like I have such incredible things coming my way. Like I really want to, enjoy these moments. Like maybe I'm going to like work on sets and music up until this point. But when I go to these things, like I just want to be completely present and enjoy the experiences. Like I got to perform on Groove Cruise. That was a few weeks ago. And then I had the LA show kind of right after that. And I just remembered like constantly reminding myself, like, just be present, enjoy the moment because it's going to go by so quickly. And when I was on Groove Cruise, even I was with a bunch of artist friends and we ended up just having like the best weekend. And it was like the first time in a while where I was like, yeah, I'm just going to like let loose and just enjoy the experience. And it was one of the best weekends I've had. And I got to like really connect with so many people like on that ship.
Yeah.
And it just really brought me back to myself.
There you go. Yeah. And that's another good point too, is like at the end of it, what are you actually going to remember? Like what are you actually going to look back on? Because it's not you're not really going to look back on like the time when you grinded for 8 months straight. And it's like all of that just sort of fades into the background. Even a lot of what is ostensibly the highlights, like a lot of the shows end up being in the background, all of that. And, what we end up with just a few memories. And it's like, well, what are they? Like, what are the things that, we're really going to look back on and be like, that was the time, that was what I really missed the most now, or that was when I was having the most fun. And it's usually moments like those where it's, you just let loose a little, or you're with people you care about, or any of that. It's the stuff that's kind of to the side of all the work,
Mm-hmm.
And the work gets you to those places. But it's like, then you also, it's a hard thing to do because, yeah, you got to work to get to those places. But then when you're there, you got to chill out and be able to enjoy it a little.
Yeah, I think it comes back to discipline too, to just really make sure you give yourself to that experience and you let go of like everything else. Like, yes, you're always going to have things to do, but to just pause and enjoy. Like, I think you just like broke my heart a little bit because it's true. No, really, like it's really like the little moments, like the little experiences, like the little connections that you have with people. And when you're so busy and caught up in like everything you're doing, you can't just like take a step to be like, hey, let me just enjoy the company of everybody I'm with and like just enjoy the fact that like this show is happening right now,
Yeah.
It's so easy to like forget that and just be like, okay, this is the next thing that's coming up. I have so many things to work on. It's like what we get to do is so dope and so special. And I feel like I constantly forget that, not everyone lives this life to be on planes and to get to do shows and to get to make music and, just really making sure to soak it all in because it all goes by so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's at the end of the day, I think that's the healthiest mindset any of us could have is just gratitude, like and keeping yourself in that place of gratitude. I talk about it a lot on this podcast, but it's if you're approaching anything from that mindset, you're going to have a better experience, no matter what it is, no matter if it's a good or bad thing. If you can try to be grateful for whatever's going on at the time, that's just going to make it a better experience. You're going to remember it. It's going to be valuable. It's going to mean something to you as opposed to, just, going and smashing the show and moving on. That's kind of just, that's just sort of following the track you already laid out for yourself, but it can get kind of mechanical, I guess, after a certain point.
It can. And I also feel like having really great people around you that like help you enjoy those moments too is really special. Like I feel like a big shift that I also made in the last probably like 5 months of my life is also just really putting that time back into relationships and like friendships and everything. And now I'm like, I have people that I care about so deeply in my life, and they really like see me and care about me. And, even like one of my friends, Bijou, shout out to
Yeah, shout
him.
out Bijou.
He texts me like right after the show and he's like, hey, just make sure you like celebrate this one, like this is a really big deal. Like after the LA show,
that's
he's
nice.
like, make sure you take that time to like really enjoy this because you work so hard for it.
That's really nice. Yeah, that's a good friend. Yeah, shout out Bijou, man.
Shout out Bijou, the best.
Well, man, I had like a few other questions written down, but I almost feel like this has been such a perfect like just focused conversation. I feel like I want to save the last couple of questions till the next time because they don't really have anything to do with what we've been
Round
talking
3.
about. But this has been great. I mean, is there anything else on your mind? Anything else you want to tell people? Anything else you wanted to talk about?
I feel like what's crazy is I never talk about this stuff either because I'm very like, I don't know, I'm very big into positivity and I've always been like about spreading that message. So when you're like going through this stuff, it's hard to talk about it. So this was like my first time actually, I think, talking about it. And it's cool to tell people because I feel like a lot of people keep quiet about like what actually happens behind the scenes. And I feel like things like this help other people understand that like literally nothing is perfect. Everyone is going through something at any point in their lives. So I guess I just want to say, be kind and be loving, and everybody's dealing with some shit. So like hug people and love people and that part.
Yeah. The way I always think about it is that it's very comforting and makes me feel closer to people when I remind myself that no one else has any idea what they're doing either, And it's especially for what we do, which is a public figure kind of job. And, we present ourselves in certain ways and social media gives people an idea and all that. And it's very easy to think that kind of everyone knows what they're doing when in fact it's the complete opposite and actually nobody has any clue. And every once in a while you think you figure it out and then something happens and then you realize that, oh, no, still didn't have it. And that's just going to keep happening. And the fact that it happens for all of us, I'm like, great. Like we're all doing it together,
I know. And you're constantly learning and evolving and changing. And I feel like just letting into those experiences rather than like feeling like you have to be somewhere else in your life or be like, oh, like I can't deal with this right now. I need to be this like positive and smiley person. It's like, no, like everybody kind of goes through things at a different point. They learn at a different point. And that's why I feel like it's so important to just have compassion because nobody has it figured out. And, we're all just, I guess trying our best.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this has been a very positive conversation. We're talking about, going through a hard period, but like generally that's what happens is like it gets worse and then it gets better. And yeah, wherever anyone is at in that arc, it's like, it's fine. Just wait a little bit if it's tough and work through it. And you're always going to be going through it at some point, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
100%. And I feel like just giving yourself compassion during those times and knowing that I think it's hard to know in the moment, but knowing that it's not permanent and you're going to come out of the other side. Like what is, I guess, a good song to listen to this maybe is like About This. The Climb by Miley Cyrus.
Okay. I don't actually know that tune. I got to check it out.
It's great. It's like literally like you're climbing over a mountain and like you're pushing and then you get over it. You're constantly put through challenges in life and you face things and you move forward, but you can't move forward unless you try new things, you take risks and, you put yourself out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that awareness that it is temporary and that it's something that happens to everyone. I was listening to a podcast. This is the last thing I'll say, but I was listening to a podcast and this guy who's kind of like definitely more of a spiritual thinker than I am, but he was talking about, sort of what is consciousness, what is existence, that kind of thing. Like, who are we really outside of like a body with muscles and a skeleton, like what's actually in our personalities, like what is a spirit, that kind of thing. And he was saying sort of along all of those lines that whenever he's going through something hard, he tries to take this view of almost watching it happening to himself, where it's like, so it's like if I was like, something bad happens and I'm in a bad place, or I'm angry, or I'm depressed or something, trying to take that view of like, oh man, it's really tough for him right now. He's really going through it, but like, I wonder how he'll get out of it. Like, I'm sure, I'm looking forward to seeing, how he makes it better. But thinking about that about yourself, which is a weird concept, but it's actually been kind of helpful for me as far as just, realizing like, oh yeah, this is just a person going through a temporary thing. And behind that, I know who I am, and I like myself more or less. And so it's like, well, I know I'll figure it out. I don't know how, and it's not fun, but there is like, it's helpful for me to have that certainty of like, oh no, like he'll figure it out. He's a good dude. He knows what he's doing more or less. Like, it's just going to take a while. And there's something about that when in my better moments, when I can have that perspective about myself, it's kind of helpful. I don't know why I went on that rant, but I've been thinking about it.
I feel like we could go down like a wormhole with this, because it sounds like insane, but it's such a like interesting concept that you can just remove yourself from the situation and just view it differently. And I feel like that's how you get out of these like difficult periods, is almost just, switching your mindset. So that's kind of like on the same.
I mean, it sounds kind of like what you were saying. It sounds like what you were saying about when you were laying in bed that one time and, you just kind of step back from it for a second.
I know. I something literally just switched my brain. I'm like, no, this is not, girl, this is not it. Like, you're good. Like, get your shit together. Like, go.
Yeah. Well, because that's that third person perspective of being like, it's like almost like you're a character in a TV show, and you're like, well, why are they having her do that? That's like not how this character would act in this situation. That kind of thing. See, this is so. At the end of the day, we all die anyway. Not to like, end on right there with you.
Here we go. At the end of the day, we're all gonna die anyway. So why not go for everything that you want in life? Why not take the risks? And why not put yourself out there, fail, get rejected, whatever it is, but try all these crazy experiences and see if it works out. Like, be happy, go for it, love and experience things.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you gotta throw yourself into it. That's a rule for pretty much anything in life. It doesn't have to be music. That's pretty much everything.
100%. That's the energy. Like, I remind myself this, like, I always remember this like right before any show, but I also try to remind myself just throughout the day, like, at the end of the day, like, no matter what is happening, like, nothing truly matters. Like, all that matters is you just have good experiences in life and you're happy. Whatever you got to do to get there, do it. But like, you just got to enjoy life.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, that's absolutely the most simple thing ever. You just have to enjoy yourself.
Boil it down. Yeah. And here's the actual last thing I'll say, because, talking about, you were saying that like, I have trouble separating like the person from the music, the artist from who I am as a person, that kind of thing. And even that's fine. Like there is always this mentality that like, oh, I got to change these things about myself, or like I got these problems about myself I need to work on, which self-improvement is great. But then I think the flip side of that is like also giving yourself the grace to be like, oh yeah, that's, so it's an issue maybe, but that's fine. That's like kind of what you were saying earlier is like, acknowledge that like, yeah, this is a thing that I want to work on eventually, but then you don't let those things in life, and this could be anything for anybody, you don't let that slow you down. You don't feel guilty about it. You're just like, okay, this is the situation we're in. And, I'm going to try to enjoy life, like you're saying. And while I do that, let's see if I can tweak some stuff to make me enjoy it more. But it's less about the guilt mindset or like there's something's broken and I got to fix it. It's more about what you were saying, I think, just throwing yourself into it.
Yeah, and just going head first. To build on this is the last thing I'm going to say too, because I feel like we could probably talk for hours here. Yeah. I think that the interesting thing is like we also might get opinions from other people or think that we're not on the right path or whatever. But during that time, everything that happened, just even though I got very confused with everything, just talking to so many people, getting so many opinions and everybody telling me a different direction I should go. At the end of it, when I really came back to myself, I realized that I had it all along. Like everything that I was already doing is exactly what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that I needed to change. Like I literally had all of the answers just like right in my gut. Like it was literally there all along. And I didn't need anybody's opinion. I didn't need anybody's help. Like, yes, there might be some people that have been doing this longer than me, but they don't know the right thing for me. And I think it really comes back to like trusting yourself and also just really giving yourself grace and like being your own cheerleader and being your own like friend and your own support system.
Yeah, 100%. That's all it is at the end of the day. In this kind of career, it's easy to get knocked off course, but I think that's always got to be your North Star is like, no, I know what I'm doing here. I know why I started doing this, and sometimes that's hard to find, but at the end of the day, it's kind of the only answer that's going to work out long term, I think.
100%. And at the end of the day, wouldn't you rather live a life where you're doing things for yourself or doing things for, what somebody else might want for you or somebody else's perspective? Because no matter who it is, it doesn't matter. You need to be happy. And that's like number one. Before anything else, you need to be good and you need to be happy. Everything else kind of just follows around that. But if you're not good, like what can you do from there?
Yeah, no, if you're not good, none of the rest of it's going to be good anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
That part.
Yeah. All right. I feel like that's a good moment to end on. But man, thank you for doing this again. This is such a fun talk. It's great catching up with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really love these podcasts. I listen to so many of these. So I appreciate you having me back. And it's always great talking with you.
That's nice. Well, it means a lot, man. And yeah, anytime. This is, many more to come, I'm sure.
Let's go.
All right. Well, I hope to run into you somewhere out there soon. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.